guys, hope everyone out there is doing well. Let's see, it is Thursday afternoon. I'm about to go over to the garage gym for a little while and do some training. But there's been something on my mind that I thought I would share with all of you, and that is the topic of Filipina dating nightmare stories. You've all heard them, I'm sure, and it's inevitable that when you talk about the subject of possibly dating a girl from the Philippines or even marrying one, you hear these stories. And we all know what I'm talking about. You've heard stories of young women who have scammed men for hundreds or thousands of dollars. You've heard stories of guys who have brought someone here and then she cheats on him or leaves him once she gets her American citizenship. You've heard all of these. And so the question is, what are you going to do with this information? And I've just been kind of thinking about this lately for some reason. And I think there's really three things you can do with it. One of them is the best approach, and the other two, not so much. Hang on just a second. I'm chatting with somebody on Facebook right now. Okay, so Filipina dating nightmare stories. The first approach you can take with these, and I don't think this is a good one, is that you can simply ignore them. You can take them and say, well, that's them. That could never happen to me. I'm smarter than these guys. I'm better looking than these guys. I'm whatever. So the chances of me getting scammed somehow are zip. It'll never happen to me. And as you know, that usually doesn't work out so well. The moment you say something could never happen to you, a lot of times you are extremely vulnerable to that very thing. So I wouldn't recommend you approach the nightmare stories that way. Another way another approach you can take, I'll put it that way, and I've seen this too, is you just kind of say, well, you generalize these stories and say, well, this happens to everyone. In other words, every Filipina that's out there trying to find a Westerner, she's just in it for the green card. She's just in it for the money. She's just in it for whatever. And obviously, I don't think that's a good way to look at things. I think it's, quite frankly, a ridiculous way to look at things. Because as many of you know, I lived in the Philippines for 11 years and I had the chance to meet a whole lot of people there, and half of those people were female and most of them were pretty nice. And the idea that all Filipinas are dishonest or all of them are out for whatever, that's complete nonsense. In fact, when people comment on my blog or on this page, this YouTube page about all Filipinos are cheats or all Filipinos are dishonest or whatever, I usually, not usually, I always delete their comment and ban them from the channel. And to me, I take that personally after living in the Philippines for so long, and the fact that my wife is a Filipina. Yeah, I take it a little personally when somebody says they're all whatever, because it's nonsense, and I don't have time to deal with people with that mentality. So you shouldn't dismiss all the stories. You shouldn't overgeneralize the stories. What can you do? I think the best way to approach the nightmare stories about Filipina dating is you just simply use them as cautionary tales of sorts. You recognize that not every Filipina out there is a scammer. Most of them are not, but you do have to make or do your due diligence to make sure the girl that you're chatting with online is one of the good ones. And it's some of the simple things that I've talked about before on this video. If she starts asking you for money and you've never met her, then that's a bad sign. Or you can do some things to reduce your risk. Now, understand this, I've probably said this before on the video. on this channel. I mean, anytime you get involved with a relationship, there are risks involved. There's no way to completely eliminate the risk. If you get married, there is a risk that your marriage could fall apart. It's a risk that, for me, was definitely worth it. And, again, I think the best way to think about this is yes, people in the Philippines are like people everywhere else. There are bad ones and there are good ones. So if you're thinking about dating or marrying a Filipina, you just have to use due diligence. And that's kind of what it boils down to. Now, I get amused at people on either side of this issue as far as the comments on YouTube. I hear from a lot of people, as I've mentioned, that are all negative and everything, and it may be that they have had bad experiences. And if you're out there listening to this and you've had a bad experience, I feel bad for you. I really do, and I understand that. I can relate to that in some ways. Won't get into a lot of details about it here, but as far as the relationship I have with my wife, we've been married now for about 5.5 years. We're expecting a baby, and we're really happy. And my my experience is not an isolated one. When I was living in the Philippines, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of guys that were married to Filipinas. Same thing happened when we moved back here to the United States. I was actually surprised when I was living in Alabama at how many Filipino American couples that we met. And a lot of these couples seem to be very happy. So, happiness happiness can be yours if you make the right decisions and you're cautious and you're wise. And yes, there are risks, but you can lower those risks by simply using a healthy dose of common sense. So that's how I would suggest that you approach the nightmare dating stories. They're cautionary tales.